Welcome to our series of instructional tutorials on the provisions of the 2022 Denver Green Code. This video will discuss the key changes in the latest version of the code and review the new requirements for limited mandatory use. The City and County of Denver's building, fire, and green codes are updated on a 3-year cycle to keep provisions current and ensure that they are aligned with the community's current specific priorities and goals. The updates to the Denver Green Code align with the adoption of the 2022 Denver Building and Denver Fire Codes. Progressing the provisions of the DGC and promoting its use on projects directly addresses Denver voters' prioritization of immediate climate and resilience actions in city codes and policies. Improvements to the 2022 Denver Green Code focus on further aligning development with the community's vision for Denver's future, which is captured in Denver's Comprehensive Plan 2040. The most significant change in the updated code is a shift from being fully voluntary to requiring all commercial development, including multifamily projects, regardless of project size, to meet some provisions from this code. This includes major commercial renovations as well as new construction. These new mandatory requirements for commercial projects are very flexible, allowing project teams to choose a small number of provisions from each of the 6 key areas of impact that best align with opportunities unique to their property. We will cover the limited mandatory use requirements in more detail later in this video. In addition to the new limited mandatory use, multiple provisions were added to expand choices for design teams and broaden the impact of the Denver Green Code. These key new amendments include the Ecological Impact Statement, which we will discuss later in this video, provisions that promote ecologically beneficial landscapes that are diverse, native and adapted, low water and pollinator supportive, rainwater management for small sites, limits on embodied carbon in building materials, both for concrete and steel, increased energy efficiency and storage, grid stability strategies, renewable energy generation, and electrification. Provisions focused on deconstruction, reuse, recycling, composting, and waste diversion, and outcome-focused limits for resource use and indoor environmental quality thresholds. In addition to content updates, the format of the Denver Green Code has been improved to make it easier to read and use. Added headers visually divide the code into 116 different provisions. Each chapter focuses on a specific element of the building and site, and the requirements for limited mandatory use or enhanced use are broken down by chapter. The 2022 DGC is available on the ICC Digital Codes website, where it can be viewed or purchased. The new limited mandatory use requirements apply to all new commercial buildings, including multifamily projects, regardless of project size, and require the project to meet some provisions from the code. Major renovations of commercial and multifamily buildings are also required to meet the limited mandatory use provisions. Major renovations are defined as Level 3 alterations or additions containing greater than 100,000 square feet or 50% of the existing floor area, whichever is less. See our first video in this series for more information on covered projects. Note that no part or provision of the 2022 DGC is mandatory for residential projects submitted under the Denver Residential Code. The DGC is not one size fits all, recognizing that each building and site is unique. The LMU requirements provide project teams the flexibility to choose which of the 116 provisions are the best fit for their project, while moving toward the Denver community's overall climate and resilience goals. To comply with the new limited mandatory use requirements, project teams must select a minimum of 12 provisions for new construction or 7 provisions for major renovations to incorporate into their buildings and sites. Table 101.4.1 outlines the minimum number of required provisions by chapter. The footnotes of this table include some important information. Footnote A allows for an ecological impact statement to be submitted as a substitution for one required provision from any chapter. This means a project team could swap out the EIS for one required provision from chapters 6, 7, or 8 or could reduce the required number of provisions needed for chapters 5, 9, or 10. For major renovations, where less than 20% of the site is disturbed, the provisions of the Chapter 5 Site Sustainability are not required. Project teams are encouraged to download the LMU checklist from the Denver Green Code website to use as a tool during the planning and design process as you select the best provisions for your project. A new addition to the 2022 Denver Green Code that is worth highlighting is the Ecological Impact Statement. While the other provisions fall into categories, this uniquely stands alone as it takes a holistic view of all elements of the project site. As mentioned on the previous slide, the EIS can be submitted as a substitution for any one required provision. The purpose of a site inventory and assessment of ecological attributes is to quantify impacts, both positive and negative, that the project will have on the site. Undergoing the assessment process, as well as the resulting findings, encourages a holistic design approach that considers the unique attributes of the site in the context of the Denver region. While the EIS provision borrows from the framework of certification programs such as LEED, it has been adapted to the Denver region and the goals and vision of our community. Rather than limiting the assessment to the specific site, the project team must consider multiple scales of influence, evaluating the site in the context of the Denver region and the potential of its attributes to impact the health of the evolving ecology of Denver as a single, complete living system. 9 topics must be evaluated in the EIS at both the project to site scale and the site to Denver region scale, including detailed descriptions of how these systems are functioning ecologically. These areas are topography, hydrology, climate, vegetation and animal habitat, significant wildlife habitat, soils, human use, human health effects, and air quality or air pollution potential. For more information on the ecological impact statement, watch the EIS video in this series. To learn more about the Denver Green Code, visit our website at denvergov.org/greencode, where you can watch more videos in this series, as well as register for our virtual office hours, link to the full code, and find additional resources for your project.